Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name's Joe Grabowski. I will be your host for today, and I'm so excited for this week. This is one of my favorite times of the year when we celebrate our ocean. So this week we have 50 speakers from all over the world, scientists, researchers, conservationists, explorers, people who work at aquariums and other institutions, people who are passionate about our ocean, who want to spread the word about what's happening and all the amazing things, the biodiversity and such. Related to our ocean. So we've had a great week so far. We're reaching the midway point of our hangouts, but there's still lots more to go. So today I'm so excited to be joined by Fabien Cousteau. Fabien is the first grandson of Jacques-Yves Cousteau. Fabien spent his early years aboard his famous grandfather's ships, learning how to scuba dive on his 4th birthday, which is pretty amazing. In June 2014, Fabien and his team of aquanauts lived and worked at the bottom of the ocean for 31 days in the world's only underwater laboratory, and he's currently running the Fabien Cousteau Ocean Learning Center, which is fulfilling a dream of his to create a vehicle to make positive change for our ocean and all around the world. So Fabien, as always, it's a great pleasure to have you joining us for a hangout today.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It's wonderful to see you all. It's such an absolute pleasure. I have so many stories, and I know we don't have that much time, but for all of us to get together like this was a dream of my grandfather's back in those days before he passed on in 1997. We didn't have the ability to communicate the way we do today. So to be able to connect with you and share ideas and questions and answers, hopefully, I see this is such a valuable tool to empower and passion people and really get people motivated to create a positive change for this Ocean Week and for Ocean Day and maybe every day of our lives, regardless of what we end up doing in life. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'd love to run through a few visuals and tell maybe a couple of anecdotal stories that will stimulate the audience here, the young, the youth, the ones that have all the curiosity and the unbridled imagination and enthusiasm, so that we can have a second half of this as a more of a discussion and a Q&A, if that's okay.
That sounds great to me, Fabien. We've got a great group of classrooms joining us from Canada and the US. And just a shout out, as our YouTube viewers start to climb, there's a YouTube chat sidebar on the right. You can get involved in the conversation. Send in your questions, let us know where you're watching from, and I'll keep an eye out for some of those. But for now, let's go back to you, Fabien. I'd love to see some of the images you have for us today.
You know, just like in the Roman times and even the Greek times, the open forums are sometimes a very interesting place to have conversations. So this is going to be very exciting. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen so that I can share some visuals with you all. And hopefully it'll stimulate some ideas, some questions, and some thoughts about how we can better live with the planet rather than living on the planet, and how we can maybe think outside the box for solutions on how to do that as our population grows, as we face some very serious challenges, but as we celebrate some triumphs and some great innovative ideas that are put into place, into implementation by the intrepid out there that think that nothing is impossible. And that's what, I guess, at the end of the day, the message is: nothing's impossible. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If you dream it, you can make it happen. It's just a matter of dedication and drive. And let's get this going. So I'm going to share my desktop here. Here we go. And I will start now my presentation. Can you all see this? Should be a spinning planet on the screen.
Yeah, it looks good. Nice and full screen.
Awesome, awesome. So first of all, I just want to thank you all for having me be part of your day, for sharing some time with me. It is an exciting journey to be on this unique oasis in space. This little blue planet that should be called Planet Ocean is really the circulatory system that connects us all, and the life support system that enables anything and everything that we know that lives so far within our solar system, and possibly within the close proximity within the universe. that allows it to live. And we know so little about this planet, especially the ocean part of our planet. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about what's in our ocean, which is a mind-blowing thing to think about. After 100+ years of modern-day ocean exploration, we've explored less than 5% of our ocean world to date. How blessed are we to be able to have that possibility of adventure? And whether you go to the beach for vacation or eventually become a scuba diver or a sailor, or who knows, maybe you will become the next aquanaut, which is the same thing as an astronaut in space. You know, we have explored less than 5% of our ocean. There's 3.4 billion cubic kilometers of volume in there. And within all of that, there's about, some scientists say 94% of our world's biodiversity that is there for our discoveries down in the future. So for me and for others like me, that means that there's job security, which is really exciting. Now, some of you may know this gentleman, the veterans of life may know this. You young people who are just coming out to your own and exploring your trajectory in life may not know this gentleman. This name, the gentleman in the middle is Jacques-Yves Cousteau. Jacques-Yves Cousteau is worldwide renowned and known as a pioneer. He was my grandfather. He was a pioneer in ocean exploration. And most importantly, he was a storyteller and a communicator in an era where it was a vacuum and needed. So it allowed for the world to be able to explore the undersea world through his television series, Jacques Cousteau, The Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau, and subsequent films and TV shows. And since he was a pioneer, he had to invent a lot of the things that we take for granted today. The scuba, the regulator, which allows for scuba diving that we use in modern day scuba diving today, was co-invented by him and Émile Gagnon from Air Liquide. The first underwater camera housings, the first underwater submersible for scientific research, the first underwater house or a laboratory underwater. All those things were pioneering efforts, not so much because he liked to invent, but because they were tools necessary to get him to where he wanted to go in the ocean. And that's how I grew up. Now, I hate to say this in front of a whole bunch of educators, but I was a terrible student in class because, as you mentioned, I started my scuba diving career on my 4th birthday. Now, you know, special circumstances within my family, that's not something that people normally do. You have to wait till you're 10 to start learning to scuba dive, and 12 by the time you get your scuba diving license. But I highly encourage you to think about that down the road, because it opens up that 99% of our world's living space to you. To be able to plunge yourself and break free of your earthly bonds, to fly it without the problems of gravity and explore this mysterious, amazing world is quite a blessing, and it's something that I hope all of you get a chance to do at some point in your lives. Yes, that is me with a humpback whale. It was something that I cherish to this day. We were in the Hawaiian Islands on expedition. I was free diving, which is both a good and a bad thing. This female humpback was sleeping. She was 60 feet further down from me. And unfortunately, I was at about 60 feet and had to go back up. So I never got a chance to get too close to her, which actually is probably a good thing. But if you ever get a chance to go and observe other sentient beings, especially cetaceans, which are whales and dolphins in the wild, it is just a heartwarming and connective experience that you will never forget. Now, when I was young, I grew up with a series of comic books that I used to read. Tintin and Le Trésor de Rackham le Rouge, or Red Rackham's Treasure, was one of my favorites, and I would always go back to it and dream about building my own shark-shaped submarine to swim underwater and go explore the bottoms and the depths. Well, a few years ago, I got a chance to live out that dream. It was a crazy idea. It was something that I was told was impossible. And that's something that just drove me to do it even more. And in building that shark-shaped submarine, I fulfilled something else, which was when I was working with National Geographic as an emerging explorer, I was kind of brought up in a way that I would see sharks on dives a lot. And over the years, over the decades, I saw the dwindling populations of sharks, but I didn't see the dwindling press and the more comprehension of press talking about sharks in a more sentient way. It was mind-blowing to me that to this day, we still see shark attacks in the press as if we were reliving Jaws back in the 1970s. And that's really a fallacy. When you look at sharks today, there are over 100 million sharks that get killed every day because of human beings. And yet there are only about a dozen or so fatalities by negative encounters with sharks in the wild. Now we have over 100 million people or more, hundreds of millions of people in the world swimming around in the same places that sharks swim around every single day, and yet there are only about 12 fatalities worldwide every year. So we really have to recalibrate our thinking of sharks and how they are a vital piece of the puzzle within the ecosystem in our oceans. So I decided to use this vehicle, this shark-shaped submarine, to swim amongst sharks to try and camouflage myself and learn more about them as if we weren't there. And we learned a lot about this. It was televised on primetime on CBS. It was an amazing experience. It was something that was kind of different from what my grandfather used to do, because it was almost more dramatic and about the adventure and about the challenges of building a prototype submarine. And you sneak the science through the back door, and then all of a sudden you talk about tracking sharks for 24 hours live, and you start talking about shark behavior and communications in a way that is a much more engrossing experience to the general public. And I was really excited about that. Later on, I got a chance a couple of years ago, as you mentioned, to relive and maybe do one step further than my grandfather did with his Conshelf 2 experiences. And Conshelf 2 and 1 and 3 were all underwater habitats that my grandfather built. Well, there was only one habitat left in the world a couple of years ago called Aquarius, and it's 9 miles offshore and 60 feet down off the Florida Keys. And it was at the bottom, and we used this platform where I took my team of aquanauts, or aspiring aquanauts, to live and work underwater for 31 days. And we were able to walk away from this experience, not only doing live casts through different platforms, Google Hangouts, Skype in the classroom sessions, etc., and really engage over 100,000 students live from the bottom of the sea, inside and outside the habitat, to show them what we were experiencing, show them what we were learning, what everyday life was in this inner space station at the bottom of the sea, but also really be able to generate over 3 years worth of scientific research in a mere 31 days. And that really highlights the value of living in the alien environment and being immersed in that environment. And the advantage, the huge advantage of living and working out of an underwater house is giving or getting the luxury of time, a little bit like an astronaut would colonizing Mars. You know, all of a sudden you're on site and you have the luxury of time to wander out and experience your local neighborhood and all in its inhabitants. And as much as I love Mars exploration, and I'll sign up for exploring those oceans, first, sign me up right away. There is so much left out there to explore in our undersea world that luxury of time is the huge asset that we have so very little of. So let me share with you a 2 or 1.5 minute video of what that was.
I want you to meet Captain Jacques-Yves Cousteau, the world's foremost underwater explorer.
Once upon a time, my grandfather believed that man could live and work beneath the waves. We began to look at the ocean differently. He inspired me and generations to explore the human-ocean connection. It was a whole new world, a world without sun. And in 1964, he lived and worked for 30 days on the ocean floor. But then something happened. We lost our way. Countless frontiers unexplored. Oceans that need our help more than ever. It's time for a reboot to re-spark the human-ocean connection. My name is Fabien Cousteau. Join me and my crew on a journey to Aquarius, the last undersea habitat, and prove that there is a future for us beneath the waves.
So in the interest of time, I cut that a little short, but I hope you got kind of a very basic sense of what it was like to live and work underwater for 31 days. I also wanted to say that those 3 years worth of research ended up being over 12 papers, scientific papers generated by ourselves as well as our education partners at FIU and Northeastern University and MIT. And we were really able to look more in depth at some of the challenges. And we have a lot of challenges facing us today, not only on land, but also in the ocean, because this, at the end of the day, is one closed loop system, an ecosystem. And it's really, at the end of the day, I think what drives me is redefining values, which is the epicenter of all the things that are our challenges as a global community, as a species that needs to live in symbiotic relationship with our life support system. From global environment ones to just the individual challenges of our daily searches, we need to be able to better address our value and our understanding of what our actions do and what the repercussions are. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we need to better manage our ecosystem and our behavior in order to be able to exist on this planet as well. It's not about so much protecting the planet, because the planet will go on, but it's about protecting ourselves and our fellow living beings. Now, we look at all of this. To me, it breeds opportunity to make change, which brings opportunity for jobs, economic development, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what we need to really pay attention to are some of the basic lessons of life and nature, which is, if we look at other species that have thrived for millions, or if not hundreds of millions of years on this planet, there are 3 fundamental rules that make that possible: adaptation, diversification, and evolution. And that's really what we believe in at the Fabien Cousteau Ocean Learning Center, which is, as you mentioned, my nonprofit. And I have 2 businesses. One of them is exploration, which I drive through my production company, so I can bring back interesting and exciting stories from around the world of our what we've learned, but also the nonprofit, which is something of a vehicle, as you mentioned. To me, it's a boat, so we can invite people in and become part of the adventure and really go out there, go see, go learn, and go do something about some of the problems that we have. And I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I do invite all of the general public and, of course, our educators and the kids to be part of some of these solutions, whether it's planting mangroves or rebuilding oyster reefs, for example, here in the Northeast, or helping us 3D print coral reef systems, which is pretty cool. We've hacked some printers and we have some proprietary formulations that are organic, that are made of coral, that we can actually rebuild coral reefs and see them flourish so that we have a better, not only a better understanding, but be able to imagine replanting coral reefs so that they may thrive and become their own neighborhoods and give all the things back that we've taken away from those reef ecosystems, as well, of course, as sea turtles. I mean, who doesn't love being able to release a baby sea turtle and see them thrive? Now, of course, there are challenges for all those things, including the three general topics of pollution, including plastics and other things that we put in our oceans, taking away too much of our resources from the oceans, overfishing and consumption, and of course, the big one, which is climate change, which includes acidification and such. But whatever it is that we decide to tackle in our everyday lives, as we journey forth in our own lives, as we go on to vacation for the summer, as we graduate from high school and university and really become citizens of our planet, we become the ultimate vote takers, right? And as much as we may be distracted and told that things are impossible, don't ever think that things are impossible. We can make a difference as individuals, bonding together as a community, because as individuals and as consumers, we are the ultimate vote takers, and everything that we do in life makes a difference and counts one way or another. How do you fill a bucket of positive action? One drop at a time. And if you can tell your parents, or if you can tell your neighborhood, your neighbors, your family, your decision makers in government, that you don't want them to do something, or that you encourage them to do a better job of not using single-use plastics, of walking, of using the buses, or of choosing a better vehicle to go from point A to point B, and so on and so forth. There are myriads of examples out there of daily things that you can do that not only don't cost you anything, but sometimes even give you an economic benefit. That is really the driving factor to tackle our challenges. And yes, this is us here face to face with a caiman at the bottom of the Amazon River, but it symbolizes a challenge that becomes an opportunity to tell a story, a better story, and one that hopefully will allow us to become better stewards of our environment. And at the end of the day, I want to leave you with something that my grandfather said. This is a bunch of students that I spoke to not long ago who made it their trip, at their school trip, to go and learn to scuba dive down in the Keys. And if you ever get a chance, like I said earlier, please plunge down there and enjoy the ocean world as it should be enjoyed, and come back with stories to hopefully protect that place that we love so much. But I will leave you with a couple of thoughts. At the end of the day, something that my grandfather said is really the mantra that I live every day and I try to spread, which is people protect what they love. They love what they understand, and they understand what they are taught. And that is really the fundamental crux of how we can make a difference, is teaching others in an impassioning way to care about our planet the way we care about our children. And when I was out of college in my first internship, I worked at Seventh Generation, and something that I took away from that was their mantra, which was something that they took from the law of the Iroquois nations, which are the Native Americans of North America, the 5 tribes. And that's whenever they made, their mantra was, for every deliberation, we must take into account the impact on our next 7 generations. So with that said, may your life's journey be fun, fruitful, impactful, and above all, full of empowering adventures. And I know you're on the cusp of going off to your summer vacation. And whatever fun you have out there, remember to pick up at least one piece of plastic on your beaches, in your forests, or in your urban environment, or wherever you're going, so that it doesn't go into our aquatic ecosystem and we can start taking a better step to protecting our environment. So thank you, bon voyage, and I'm going to open it up now, of course, to questions and my chitter chatter so that I can hear from all of you.
All right. Well, Fabien, thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation. And your point that there's so much left to explore and discover is so important. Our oceans are this massive frontier right here for the exploring. There's so many discoveries to be made, from species to medicines to finding ways to feed ourselves. So there's so many careers in the ocean that are available for students today. It's incredible. All right, well, let's meet some classrooms. But before we do, I just want to give a shout out to anybody who's watching live via YouTube. On the right side, there's a YouTube chat sidebar. If you put in your questions there, let us know where you're from. We'll try to get to a few of them. But for now, let's meet some of our live classrooms. So we've got a great group of classrooms joining us from different spots in North America. And we're going to start with San Antonio, Texas, with some grade 3s. We're going to go to Mrs. Goff's group. Let me turn their microphone on. Good morning, grade 3s. How are you? Nice big grade 3s. We've got a question.
Okay, we have Lily, and let me give her the microphone. Stand right here in the front so they can see you. There you go. There's Lily. Can you hold this? Back a little bit, Lily. There you go. Now wave at the camera.
What do you eat when you're down there?
What do I eat when I'm down there? I'm assuming you're talking about Mission 31 and as an aquanaut. Well, and correct me if that's not the question. But essentially, imagine you being in an inner space station, right? So Aquarius was about the size of the living space of the space station that's floating above Earth. We eat the same things that they do. We basically eat freeze-dried food, morning, noon, evening, and for snacks, for the most part. And I've got to say that that was probably, as a French person, the most difficult thing, because if you've ever gone camping and you've eaten freeze-dried food, it's fun the first time. It's okay the second time. The third time it gets a little boring. But when you're doing it all day long for 31 days, believe me, I was very much looking forward to eating a fresh apple or a carrot or anything that was not freeze-dried or processed.
And I can vouch for that. You connected with our class. I believe it was day 13, and that's one thing you spent some time talking about. You showed us the food and said, you know, I think I'm about ready to pack it in with this stuff. So,
well, there's a video out there on YouTube on Mission 31, and there are 2 FIU students that show you within the minute video what the daily life is and what we're eating, essentially. Freeze-dried chicken and freeze-dried mashed potatoes and things like that.
All right, well, let's meet another classroom. Let's see, let's go to Freehold, New Jersey this time with Mrs. Kaiser. We've got some grade 5 students. Let me turn their microphone on. Morning, I
told them how to say it.
Hi. What was your favorite place to scuba dive and why?
I get that question a lot. Where is my favorite place to scuba dive and why? My favorite place to scuba dive is the one I will not tell anybody, especially since we're on YouTube, because everyone's going to end up going there, and then it won't be my favorite place anymore. But why is it my favorite place is because essentially it is still in a beautiful state. It's a state that I remember when I was 7, 8, 9 years old going diving there, and every time I go back, it's still beautiful. It's still a fireworks display of life. It's amazing. I mean, I will tell you, it's in Papua New Guinea, so not everyone can go there. But it is just gorgeous. And to this day, from when I was 7 until now, I go back there every so often, and it's still beautiful. Yes, there are a few problems, but by and large, the water is almost 90 degrees. There's like a bathtub. There's color everywhere. There's movement everywhere. There's life everywhere. The coral reefs are in good shape. And the residents of the coral reef always surprise you with amazing behavior, and there's always a new discovery. So for me, I'm super excited to go back there all the time.
All right, thank you for that question. Great question. Let's jump to another classroom. Let's go to, there we go. Let's go to, we've got 6-7s, grade 6-7 joining us in Markham, Ontario. So here in Canada, not too far from me. And it's Mrs. Kolabawala's class. And if you don't mind just turning your microphone on for me, it's just off of my screen. I can't reach it today. If you can turn, there we are. Hey.
Okay, it'll turn now.
All right, there they are. Who's got a question?
All right. YOLO. Okay. Question. Go ahead, guys. Question. So, question: what made Fabien take this up as a career?
So I saw that question pop up. I think one of the other students from the other schools also asked that on a text. What made me do what I do and my career? It's all my grandparents' fault and my parents' fault, because from a very young age I got addicted to ocean and ocean exploration, and it's a wonderful addiction to have. It is a beautiful place, and if you've ever had the opportunity to even peek under that blue veneer with a mask and a snorkel, you'll understand what I mean when I say that you can never go back. You'll always want to see more, because it's so different from our everyday lives. And it's just so beautiful in so many ways and so curious. And for me, I'm a curious person, and I always love seeing what's new, what's different. And I always want to see what's behind that next coral reef. So it's not an easy job. It is a very difficult one, as a matter of fact, but it's one that I would never trade for the world. And whatever you do in life, whatever your passion is, go for it, because this will make you a success. If you are doing something you do not like, you will not be as good as you can be. So do something that you are very passionate about, whatever it is. If you're an ocean explorer, a scientist, an educator, a business person, whatever it is, do it, and do it 110% to be the best at it.
All right, excellent advice for sure. So we're going to visit our next classroom. They are joining us from, let's go to Farmington, Missouri now, grade 5-6 classroom. Let me turn on their microphone. Hey, Missouri, how's everyone doing?
Good. We have been studying the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Have you ever encountered any animals that have pollution on their plastic in them?
It's a very good question, and unfortunately, everyone's focusing on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, but there's a garbage patch in every sea, in every what we call ocean, but it's really every sea: the North Pacific, the South Pacific, North Atlantic, South Atlantic, Caribbean, Mediterranean, so on and so forth. There's garbage in every ocean. Unfortunately, we are seeing over 35,000 pieces of plastic within a square mile of ocean all over the planet. Now, that sounds like a lot. It's not spread out that way. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch, because of the gyres, and other oceans because of the gyres, which are circular currents, capture that plastic in concentrations. And in some places, I've seen very little, if any, plastic. And in some places, I've seen over 90 of plastic floating at the top of our oceans. And within that, unfortunately, I see a lot of animals that get injured or die because of eating too much plastic or getting entangled in it. And it is a very, very real problem. It is a huge problem. hundreds of thousands of animals die every year. Now, that's one problem. The other problem is that we're eating our own garbage, because those animals that do survive and that are eating that plastic and other things that we throw in our ocean, we end up eating those animals ourselves. So we're actually eating the plastics, which is awful. So we really need to change that, and we need to clean up our oceans and clean up our act.
All right, great question and an excellent point. There's a long-running project right now where people are collecting samples from all over the world, and out of thousands and thousands of water samples, I think 2 have come back free of plastic. So it's everywhere. It's a pretty big issue. Okay, let's jump to another classroom. So we're going to go to Austin, or not Austin, San Antonio, Texas this time. We've got some grade 11 students joining us with Mrs. Brown. Let me turn their microphone on. Hey, grade 11s.
Hi. All right, I have a question. What was it like in order to design the shark submarine, and how was it piloting that submarine? What challenges and what experiences did you gain from this process?
So for Mind of a Demon, it was very difficult because it was something that had never been done before. There were a lot of components to building the submarine that were unknown. You know, essentially, the overarching storyline is that about 50% of the time it worked. And the other 50% of the time, there was a problem of some sort. And I'll explain why in a nutshell. The shark sub itself was built with materials that were never really designed to be underwater in the first place. So we had to be innovative. We used skin flex, which was the outside layer of the shark sub, which created a camouflage, if you will, a skin-like material that was used for animatronics and prosthetic limbs and all that. So you can colorize it, texturize it, everything else, and it's stretchy. So that the inner ribbing structure, which was held together by macrolon, which is a bullet-resistant material like Lexan, it was flexible enough so that we could actually have a propulsion system, a closed-circuit pneumatic propulsion system, that would drive the tail like a fish. So we had fish. I had fish propulsion inside, but that fish propulsion was problematic in itself. The lines would burst every so often, or I would have other mechanical problems. And the head of the shark sub was supposed to be articulated, so I could do grimacing, flexing the pectoral fins, the eye roll movement, the grimacing, the gill flaring, to communicate with other sharks. But unfortunately, it was such a task just to pilot and be on a rebreather, which is another thing in itself, that we left that part of it alone. And I could only see out of the shark sub through 2 monitors, which are fed by 2 external cameras, one behind and one in front. And so it was a very, very difficult thing to do, not something taken lightly. And in summary, I guess I could probably now build a shark-shaped submarine for scientific research and exploration based on all the things that you should not do.
All right, and you know what? That's a good thing. Failure is a really good thing because you can learn so much from it if you take those lessons and you try again. So it's actually a pretty good thing. All right, so let's take another journey. Let's visit Mrs. Venner's class. There are 4-5s in Smith Falls, Ontario, here in Canada. And let's just check your mic. I think it'll work okay. Let me just turn it on. Oops, that's not your mic. Try that one more time.
That Mrs. Venner's class. There are 4-5s in Smith Falls, Ontario, here in Canada. And let's just check your mic. I think it'll work okay. Let me just turn it on. Oops, that's not your mic. Try that one more time.
Sounds a little delayed. Can you hear me, Mrs. Venner?
Can you hear us at all?
We can, yeah.
You paused it. I didn't do anything.
There are 4-5s in Smith Falls, Ontario, here in Canada.
That's technology working.
I think it'll work okay. Let me just turn it on. Oops. Try it one more time.
Sorry. Well, it's a little delayed. Can you hear me, Mrs. Venner?
Can you hear us at all?
I can, yeah. All right, I'm going to put them on mute for now. But Mrs. Venner, if you send in the questions via the YouTube chat bar like you were just doing, or sorry, the blue chat sidebar, I'll make sure that they get in. But for now, let's jump to our final live classroom. Joining us, we have Mrs. Holt's class, grade 7-8, joining us in Farmington, Missouri as well. So let me turn their microphone on. Morning, 7-8, how are you?
Good morning.
Hi.
Our teacher has a question for you.
What made you choose a documentary filmmaker as a career?
Well, yeah, it's a very good question. Being a documentary filmmaker is like being a stepchild of filmmaking, right? We do a lot of hard work, and unfortunately, there's not enough funding in general to do it. So you have to be very creative, very frugal, and under debt, you have to be very patient, because if you're doing wildlife, you're on nature's schedule, not the other way around. And so it's a very challenging endeavor, and it's certainly not one that's for everybody. But why I did it? Well, simply because I grew up in a family of documentary filmmakers, and we believe that it is of crucial importance to bring back some of the exciting adventures and discoveries that are out there to the general public, many of whom will never get a chance to go and travel or especially do what we do, partially because it's very dangerous, partially because it's very difficult, and in many ways, it's just not feasible for a lot of people to do. Now, that said, it is a career that if you are inclined to want to create your own stories, especially nowadays with these mobile devices, it's very easy, much easier to tell stories. It is something that is very rewarding at the end of the day, not so much in a financial way, but very much in an impactful way, one that relates a message. If you do it the right way, you get people to pay attention, understand, and care about whatever the cause is that you're trying to relate to the general public.
Okay, and then I've got some questions for Mrs. Venner's class. We tried to visit them, but their sound is just a little bit too far behind for us to keep up. But they're grade 4-5s in Smith Falls, Ontario. And there's two questions here. One's kind of funny, and the other one's a little more serious. But the first one is about barnacles, and what does a barnacle feel like? And the second one is more about careers. If you didn't have a career in the ocean, what would you be doing?
So we were just clicking on the mute button together. That's a very, very good question. So what does a barnacle feel like? First of all, I want to say that I am so excited to know that there are a number of classrooms here who are in landlocked states. And I highly encourage you to visit your local aquatic ecosystem, whether it's a lake, a stream, a river, and maybe if you get the chance, even the ocean. Because remember, if you're skiing on top of a mountain, you're skiing on the oceans. The water system that we all depend on is the universal connector for us, and one that is something that we all depend on, and it's really an exciting place to be around. Now, what does a barnacle feel like? That's a funny one. I like that. Well, barnacle is typically very, very rough. It is a very interesting prehistoric type of critter. It is something that I'm fascinated with, depending on the species of barnacle. It has a very long and intriguing story. And on your second, and it's also happens to be one of the lower tiers in that food pyramid or food web that not only other critters depend on, but also is a wonderful feeder that gives off quite a few benefits to the rest of the ecosystem. What would I do if I weren't in this world as an ocean explorer? Wow, that's a good question. I would say my knee-jerk reaction would be to be an archaeologist. I've always loved digging in the backyard, and I get to do that a little bit in the ocean world. Whenever we stumble upon a a wreck, a shipwreck, or something else, an underwater city, because there are underwater cities, whether it be in the Yangtze River or off of Greece or wherever it's been immersed because of the rising water levels. You know, those things we sometimes stumble on archaeological finds of value, and I do get to live out my second fantasy life as well. So there are a lot of other careers I would love to do as well, and there's just not enough time in my life to do them all, but I do try and dabble a little bit in them. And underwater or archaeologist in general would be probably a second career.
All right, awesome, excellent question. Well, I think it's a great that we ended off too, bringing up that we did have some landlocked classrooms. And like you mentioned before, the ocean is important no matter where you live in the world, whether it's food you eat, the climate, it has such a big role in our everyday life. So it doesn't matter where you live, and you can make a difference in your community, especially if you just take a minute and share what you learned today. That's the easiest thing you could do, is tell someone else why the ocean's important and what you can do to help conserve it. So first of all, classrooms, thank you so much for a great hangout today. As per usual, your classroom or your questions were excellent. I always enjoy this type of events. And Fabien, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with the classrooms today. Thank you for the busy week that you have now, celebrating our ocean and getting the word out and what you do every single day. So again, thanks for hanging out with us today.
And one more thing, don't forget to march on, if you can, on the 9th, this Saturday, for the oceans. If you're in DC or anywhere you happen to be, march for the oceans.
All right, excellent. Well, again, thanks everyone for joining us. We have many more ocean events coming up this week. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll see some of you again soon. So thanks everyone, thanks Fabien, and everyone have a good day. Let me turn the microphones on. All right, thanks everyone.